Hello, welcome to another Zoid's YouTube channel video, and this one's on chapter 3 of my new book, Search for a New Sound, which is about contemporary electronic music like Aphex Twin, Square Pusher, Autechre and Boards of Canada. And well, it's a chapter on each of those and how I analyze their music to see what they're doing in it and how I approach music to get my own sound that's very distinct and unique. I'm working on this book now, should be finished in 2-3 more months. So chapter 3 is on Autechre. We used to say Autechre because we didn't know anything, but we thought the R was silent. But of course, well, there is no right way to say it. I don't think they care at all. I think they say Autechre, but you know, I believe it comes from the first letters of the words audio technology research. So they're so unique, their music, Autechre. They're really alien sounding. I think their biggest contributions to electronic music are in the rhythm. And the rhythm and the sound design, those two things. Although they have a lot of tracks with very beautiful melodies and chords as well. But since 2020, that's not how you say the year, 2020. Since 2020, Sign and Plus, their last 2 albums came out. And their albums, recent albums before that, like XI and another couple that I can't remember the names of, I hadn't really listened to them. Their music became more, I would say, uncompromising and more difficult. It's difficult to listen. You don't really sit down and stick on one of those and enjoy it. You know, you gotta pay attention to it. But so there aren't, that I know of, tracks on those albums with, you know, nice melodies and things like that. They kind of dedicated to exploring new worlds and new sounds. And I had organized a masterclass last week with Graham Massey of 808 State, and he said something like that, you know, the scene in Manchester was a very melting pot with all different musicians like knew each other, and you know, Autechre were there, and he said something interesting. He was involved in putting on gigs called, I've forgotten the name of it, but it's still on now, even in December in Manchester. And it's a gig they put on that different people play at, and it's like just an event where they put on, it's quite experimental music that different acts play at. And Graham Massey actually said in the masterclass that Sean and Rob were both, they gave out to him for not being experimental enough, not pushing enough, like, which is great, you know, when you have people like that pushing. And Graham Massey's, you know, imagine saying that. I mean, 808 State are probably known for the acid house stuff, but if you actually listen to the albums, like they have very experimental, like odd time signature and pretty mad out there stuff as well. But I thought that was great that they were like giving out to him, you're not being experimental enough. They're so dedicated to it. So that's Autechre. When I was a teenager, my friends and I would sit around and listen to Amber. Amber would be playing, which I think, well, looking back, like, you know, sums up how weird we all were, which is great. It's it's a great album. It's their second album in Cunnabulla. This is how I say their first album, in Cannabula, I've heard other people say. Those early albums, they're a lot of melodies, chords, beautiful tracks, dark though. It's dark music, dark ambient. Another interesting thing from Graham Massey that he said when he went on tour with Autechre in America, when they were on the tour bus going around and listened to different music on the tour bus, and Autechre do not like jazz or anything to do with jazz. So they weren't allowed to listen to any jazz, which is, I think, is really funny. And you can kind of hear it in their music, and you know, there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to like jazz. Poor Graham Massey, he loves jazz, so him and the bus driver, they were like barred from any jazzy stuff. So as Autechre went on with their albums, what was the album after Amber? Oh, it's Tree Repeat. So I think the first album that I bought. And that one is definitely starting to get more cold sounding. And there's one track, Uto, on probably the most famous song on that album that I do a quite in-depth analysis of in the chapter 2 of my book. But it's really beautiful sounding pad that people say is a Juno 106, but sampled into a Insonic EMU sampler, and it's got like these pitch shifts and pitch bends and stuff. It's beautiful, and the melodies themselves is like a layered B Dorian melody, kind of really lush, and then just straight ahead electro beats. This is a great, brilliant track. But in this video, I want to talk about 3 tracks that I think are the most brain melting Autechre tracks that I know of from their whole collection of tracks. So after Tree Repeat, then did we have LP5, I think was their next album, and then Confield. And then they're just getting more and more just like weird, you know. Confield is a difficult album. It's just so out there but rewarding if you put time into it. It's like sounds so foreign at first when you hear it, but rhythmically on Confield, it's unbelievable. The things they're doing, the rhythms that we're used to, they're there, but then they're morphed, and they're just figured out how to morph rhythms in ways that no one else can do. They're, you know, dividing the beats in 4s and 3s and 5s and 7s, maybe just like really playing around with the speed of things, but they're still in time. They still have some kind of form and structure going on, which just makes it. So after LP5 and after Confield, I think, then do they go into their series of, there's a LP5 and Untilted, XI, Oversteps, those ones, which I haven't really listened to that much, but they shifted, and I think that they have made a choice that no other electronic artists have made. A different choice from all others is that they prioritize their live performance, their improvising, their ability to improvise, and they created this thing they call the system. The system is their max patch, basically. They've written this software that allows them to go on stage and improvise a set of music. I don't know how prepared it is. It's not like completely different every time when they go on tour, but they're using the same kind of, or the same or similar inputs, like just the loops, the beats that they have prepared. It's not like they haven't improvised the sound design from scratch every time. There's some stuff is prepared, but they can do it in different ways every time. I've seen them live maybe 6 or 7 times since the late 90s. And 3 of those times were in the last 2 years. And those sets in the last 2 years, they're some of the most incredible musical experiences that I've had, you know, full stop. Just especially the one in Vicar Street in Dublin in October 2023. With support from Minced Oath. That was incredible. And Minced Oath, Dunk, an incredible musician who Autechre said is one of the best living musicians. High praise from them. That he's told me after that set, he's seen them 15 times. At that point, he'd seen them 15 times, and that was the best set he'd ever heard. So that set in Vicar Street just went so well, so smooth. It was very intense. I was sitting up in the balcony for it, and I just went into a really deep state of concentration listening to it. So I think that, you know, they've made a really interesting choice by focusing on this, on live performance, and they've toured a lot, and they haven't released an album since 2020. Since Sign and Pulse came out, they haven't released an album, but they've released live performances, and no one else has done that. No one else is like focused on live performance, not DJing, but actually playing live just with their laptops. You know, so I think that's a really interesting choice. And you know, it's amazing to go and see them. Like in Bristol, I went to see them last year in the Prospect building, a huge building, used to be a torpedo hangar, warehouse for torpedoes, like a Ministry of Defense building. It's huge, big, like a kind of like an airplane hangar. And I was like at least 5,000 people there to see Autechre play all new music. You know, maybe some people expected, like, where's the classics? I didn't hear any. But most people probably know that they're not going to hear any classics. They're not going to hear any old tracks. They're going to hear new music, uncompromising. Like, it's just great. They have such an audience. They can do that. It's just so, it's mind blowing, you know, because like music of that complexity, that out there-ness, that unpredictability is usually very small, very niche, like very small, you know. This is like in the academic world, if you do that kind of thing, you're almost expected to have a very tiny audience, and no one really, you're not going to have gigs of 5,000 people there. But somehow they've managed to do it. They've managed to like have an audience and their fans who, through all their albums, their sound like has changed a lot, but they have not lost their audience who still go and support them, even though they play new music all the time and it's very uncompromising. And you know, if you go and see Autechre, like, to me that's like if you went to see John Coltrane in 1965, 1966, like the, you know, late Coltrane, really out there, just incredibly dissonant and harsh. But you know, people, I don't think Coltrane was doing gigs where 5,000 people came. No way. But later on, he probably would have if he was alive. But he passed away in 1967. But to me, I think it's the same level. You know, if you're going to hear Autechre play gigs, you know, these days, then it's like it's on the level of those guys, Miles and Coltrane, in the 60s or the 50s or whatever. It's just the equivalent now. It's like in the world, you've got guys like that, people like that. I mean, they're on just such a high, deep level of music. And I bet they would like deny it. They probably would. They don't like jazz. So I don't know what they would say, even if they're just very down to earth. They're just very normal people. You can see in their Ask Me Anything's Reddit, there's hours and hours of Sean doing those on YouTube. You can watch them, and yeah, he's a very normal guy. He just does music. He just, you know, they don't probably think of themselves as anything special, which makes them all the more special. You know, it's not that they don't do many interviews. They do interviews. You can read their interviews. They're, you know, I think they're on Mastodon. They're not on Twitter, but they're not unapproachable. They're out there doing their thing, and they're just so good at it. Is the thing. They just do it so well. So that's enough of preamble. So let's jump into what I think is 3 most brain-melting Autechre tracks. Here we go. Okay, so here's the first track that I'm selecting is Fold4 Wrap5 from LP5. It's a track that does a very interesting thing where it's constantly slowing down, but every 4 bars it doubles in tempo. So it constantly is like slowing down, but every now and then doubling, so it never gets any slower. It's like the rhythm equivalent of the shepherd tones kind of oral illusion thing, which I think is called risset when it's a rhythm. So other people have talked about it. I've seen videos, I've seen people talk about this track a few times, but if you don't know it, it's really, really amazing track. Sounds like this. Well, it's really brain melting. Maybe it's only 2 bars, but it's hard to count, and it varies, as it goes along, and the lines are beautiful over. There's a great reconstruction, bleeps and bloops. That's a great YouTube channel I've discovered recently. He does a recreation of this, which is pretty interesting. So have a look at that. I'll try and count along with. I can't count along. It's mad. My friend, when I was in music college learning jazz, one of my friends, a great drummer, Sean Carpio, he went to Banff in Canada, and he had VJ Iyer, the great piano player, great jazz piano player, well, contemporary, he kind of fused jazz and Indian rhythmical stuff and highly advanced rhythmical stuff, and he was one of the tutors that year, and Sean heard him and his trio playing a cover of this track, and he brought back a recording of it, played it for me, and I was amazed. Wow. It was amazing VG Iyer knew who Autechre even were. When I was in Ireland studying jazz, like, none of my teachers knew anything about any electronic music. They were just like, no, electronic music's rhythmically boring. Jazz is where it's all at. And VG Iyer knew. And later on, VG Iyer did a whole album like in tribute of Robert Hood, which I was like, wow, VG Iyer is cool. So that's Fold4 Wrap5. And next one is Uviol from Confield. This one has incredible sound design with the bass, and it starts off like you can really hear the time, and then just gradually it just starts to like be triplets and then really weird divisions. So here it is. Like shaker with really hard swing, and then the other percussion sounds just warping between very straight into tuplets. Then you've got the glassy pads on top just getting weirder and weirder as well. So this is such a good album, really. There's so many great tracks on there, but that one is one to check. Okay, and the last track I'm selecting is from Sign, their latest album in 2020, and it is called AU14. Sounds like this. Next techno set, I'm DJ, I'm playing this track for sure. that's just a wicked loop there with the, you know, very 4/4 rhythmical. I'm sure I've heard a version of this track coming into their sets, some of their live sets in the last 3 years. Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff on this album, sound designy, weird stuff, but I love that they just like lash into just like a banger every now and then. And they do it on their live sets. They like have a kind of build up where it's really intense and really complex and weird, and then after a while they'll just go like total acid track, just like bang it out for like a minute only. They don't give it to you for too long, but you know, I've heard a couple people say, wow, imagine if they did 15 minutes of that stuff at the end of a set, or half an hour even, just be so good. So yeah, this is a total banger, love it. And that's the end of the video. So yeah, follow me on Substack, get updates on the book and all of that. And yeah, that's it now. All right, see you, bye.